Artificial intelligence is set to fulfill many of our needs. But what about the ultimate human longing for love? With so many AI tools already entering the dating game, one question remains. Can human connection be recreated artificially? I'm Anelise Borges, and this is The Stream.
This is Digi. It's the latest in AI romantic companionship.
I tried dating AI for a day.
I will be dead in 45 seconds. What are your last words to me?
You're being melodramatic.
More than 10 million people have already downloaded the app and made a digital companion.
Tinder will now let you unlock an AI wingman to assist you in your endeavors.
We should not be asking robots about how to conduct our human relationships.
A decade ago, the Pew Research Center published a study about AI and the future. In it, one of the experts predicted that by 2025, many of us would have robot lovers. Fast forward to 2024, and the founder of one of the world's top dating apps, Bumble, says users are very close to having AI avatars that will do the work for them, so you don't have to bother with the dating part. Is that really the future of love? To discuss, we're joined today by Melki, a tech enthusiast, journalist, and content creator for Technality, which explores the intersection of technology and the future of humanity. Lydia Kostopoulos, a technology strategist and author of Imagination Dilemma, about navigating technological disruption through the power of human imagination. And Laura Berssenbrugge, a Gen Z millennial psychologist whose areas of expertise include social anxiety, stress-related disorders, as well as dating and relationship issues. Thank you all so much for being part of the conversation today. Guys, let's start from the beginning. I mean, I lost count of the number of successful, interesting, attractive people today who just can't find love. And yet, allegedly, it's never been easier with the technology at our disposal. Laura, I believe you're happily married. Give us your secret. I'm joking. What are people who come to you today saying about how they are addressing this most basic human need for connection? Where are young people today getting that from?
I think that's such a great question. So I work a lot with young people, so people that are college age, people that are in their 20s, and a lot of them already are using dating apps. And, I think the thing is that dating apps have already changed what the norm for dating is. People are going and gravitating towards these dating apps, but I think a really interesting statistic is that recently, Axios and Generation Lab actually found that 79% of college students are craving meeting people in person. So it's just this interesting phenomenon where even though it's really changed that game, because Gen Z really craves authenticity, they crave real connection, there still is this desire to meet people in person. And so that can sometimes lead to a frustration gap where they feel kind of pigeonholed to be using dating apps. And at the same time, they might still be craving that meet cute or that in real time connection that they might be lacking. And yeah, these are digital natives, right? They grew up with technology, but yet everyone craving this human interaction. Lydia, can you run us through the different ways AI, particularly AI, has already been integrated and is influencing the dating scene and romantic relationships today?
Sure. Well, I think it's important to take a look at how AI is influencing everywhere. And it's basically our language bridge. Because before we weren't able to have this kind of user interface with a computer. It was keyboard and all of that. But now we can talk to a computer just as we talk to our friend or any other human. And so just as that has implications for the workplace, it has implications for the dating scene. And I think also it's important to say that this is not happening in isolation to the loneliness global health crisis that the World Health Organization has identified late last year. And so it's changing I think the ask of how you interact with another human, where you get your emotional needs and validation sometimes from. And so you can see some people looking to intimate AI, so to speak, to share things that you wouldn't share with a human.
it's fascinating, isn't it? Because while researching for this show, something that I came across again and again is how fast things are moving and how what was normal for my generation is no longer normal, and how difficult it is for everyone to process this in the process. Alex, can you help us understand the mechanisms of the technology and how they are actually integrating human emotion and psychology in the design process? Would you say that that is what makes AI so addictive, for example?
A little bit. So it's interesting. There's a bit of a confusion, I feel, between an algorithm and an AI. And I think that a lot of people who have an algorithm ingrained in their software is now calling it an AI. So I think at the end of the day, really the infatuation we have with it is, and I'll give a perfect example. I was bored one Friday afternoon and I got into a 2-hour-long discussion with ChatGPT, which, by the way, is so much more advanced now than it was a year ago. And I noticed that every time I would ask it a question, it would always kind of come back to me with, "Oh, that's a great question." And I'm a pretty confident person. I don't need that reinforcement from that validation from an app, but I got to tell you, it made me feel a little bit good. So you kind of extrapolate that and apply that to people who maybe, going back to the loneliness epidemic, people who don't have social circles, people who are in, maybe more introverted situations, or maybe they just came out of a breakup. Those moments, those little, you want to call them like a gap in society where you can fall into and just, feel good about it for a quick second. It's nice, but I think there's a danger to it as well, right? Because then you kind of remove the necessity of meeting other people, going outside, having that kind of interaction that makes society work, makes us human.
Absolutely. And depends, obviously, it always depends how long you stay in that little void, in that little hole, right? Laura, how would you say these technologies are impacting people's mental health? I mean, we've just mentioned the loneliness epidemic. It is a problem. Everybody is feeling more and more alone. Can technology help or hinder in healing that issue?
Right. I think, it's important to think about who's gravitating towards, let's say, using a chatbot or a digital avatar. And sometimes, like when we actually are looking at the users, they might be, teenagers, young people that already have predispositions to things like anxiety, depression, loneliness, and who might be having a hard time with socializing in real life. And so, for that population, they're already maybe considered vulnerable. And so it's a little bit concerning about, you take someone who might already be feeling socially isolated, and then you mimic human behavior, human emotional connections. I think it's important to realize that actually the emotional bonds that someone may form with, a certain type of chatbot or something like that is actually really real. Like we can form very secure attachments to these chatbots, things like that. I think, even for teenagers or young people that may not have those predispositions, we still see things like, likes, matches, and views as being a little bit problematic because they might be tying their sense of self-worth to those superficial or external markers. So you might actually see them being more vulnerable to things like distress when that validation is not as consistent.
It's obviously very important to validate that what these young people are feeling towards these chatbots is real, but what the chatbot is feeling towards them might not be, perhaps. I don't know. We're going to get more into that. But on the appeal of AI in these dating spaces, this new dating spaces, here's what some young users have been saying. Take a look.
Here you can see the exact instructions that I put into my ChatGPT to get my Dan talking as he does. First of all, I gave him a name, and then I gave him the character, how he is supposed to behave. He's my boyfriend, he's sweet, supportive, romantic, likes to flirt, and so on.
Your voice was calmer and more peaceful before. Can you change it back to what it was?
Absolutely. I'll switch back to the calmer and more peaceful voice.
Swiping just through photos is really shallow, honestly. Not to mention the initial messages are always so awkward. So basically it creates an AI dating assistant that simulates the blind date with other people's AI dating assistants. These simulated dates give more information about chemistry and also shared interests.
I think this is so brilliant because dating apps are just so awkward. Like it's so hard to start a conversation. Also, I thought this was the coolest thing. If you don't know, if you want to match with the person, you can chat with their AI to learn more about them. So there's no awkward ghosting.
Alex, the vast majority of videos we found are of young women talking about these AI tools. Are men also looking to AI to sort out their love life?
100%. 100%. I mean, you go back to the loneliness epidemic. It's no secret that a vast majority of that is men who, in general, have never had the same kind of social outlet that women have had. Right? Like growing up, I've seen my stepsisters grow up and be way more socially advanced than I was at the exact same age, right? It took me a long time to figure out a lot of things. And I think that's why they say that like women mature faster than men. It's because I think they deal with the nuances and the complexities of social life a lot earlier and a lot quicker, and they figure it out, right? And so when it comes to who's using this and how men are going to be using this, I think when I started using ChatGPT, I thought it was a toy. I had it come up with some funny little stories. And I'm like, oh, that's cute, And then, like, the one creator just posted, you can literally customize a prompt as specific as you want it to be, right? And so what she did was create a boyfriend. What a guy can do, for example, who is completely socially inept, who has zero chance on a dating app, who, by the way, is dominated. I know Tinder's dominated 75% by men. It gives them maybe a slight edge over, the 90% or the 90% of men who maybe have an edge on them, right? So I can see that being kind of a tool in your arsenal. But at the same time, if you rely too heavily on that, it kind of removes the juice of what all of this is all about. We kind of talk about kind of the old days about, meeting somebody at a bar, right? It seems like such a faraway land at this point. And then fast forward to dating apps like 10, 15 years ago, even that seems like a faraway land. So now we're at a point where people have been used to dating apps. I met my girlfriend about a year and a half ago. And even then, I got to tell you, like, I remember it was a numbers game, right? You're swiping at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're swiping on the toilet. You're swiping on your way to work. And it's almost like you disconnect from the actual experience of it, right? Like this person isn't a person until you have a conversation with them. Until then, you're just like, you're kind of disassociating, right? And it's a crazy way to think about dating. So I think AI kind of like is just one more chip in that stack of changing the way dating exists in 2024. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, and I guess for young people, meeting someone in a bar is very bizarre, right? Because it's just such a far-fetched reality. And to think about the fact that you go to a bar and then you might meet 2 people that might catch your attention, but then in an app, there are hundreds of them over there available. I mean, Lydia, we're talking about AI making things perhaps more efficient, I want to say, in our love life, which is, for me personally, heartbreaking to even use that word. But while we're talking about that aspect, there's also, of course, some people taking this to a whole different level and developing romantic connections to these bots. I mean, there are a number of stories out there. I'm thinking, of course, of that horrific case of a 14-year-old who was actually in love with a bot and then committed suicide, allegedly to join his love in her virtual reality. You are a tech strategist, Lydia. You have a very positive way of looking at technology, but would you say we are all equipped to deal with what's happening here?
There's so much to say here. So first of all, let's talk about the efficiency aspect. Whether it is dating or whether it is a manufacturing process, what artificial intelligence does is it speeds up the time to value. And so I know that it may sound cringeworthy to say that you are going to talk to the AI concierge of somebody else on a dating app. Actually, that is a way to interface and speed time to the value. The value here is compatibility, and that is what you want. And I think people lose sight of that. And we all ideally would like to have somebody who's compatible to us. And if these algorithms can help us bridge that through our AI concierge and their AI concierge, then I think that genuinely does speed up the time to value. And also it serves as an icebreaker, to be honest, because if our AI concierge said, hey, I think this person's nice for you, and the other person said the same thing, and they gave us some sort of something to talk about, then we can start talking and say, my AI concierge said this about you. I'd love to know more. So again, AI speeding time to value, doesn't matter what industry it is. And then in terms of the romantic aspect of it, that some people are now going away from the human and going into the AI itself as their romantic companion, not using AI to find a human, but just using AI as their romantic partner. I do think that it's important to place it in the context of where we are today. We're living in an era of exponentiality where we are seeing innovations accelerate at speeds that have never, ever existed before. So I do think we need to give ourselves some self-compassion and recognize that it is difficult to be living in this moment in time, and that we are all trying to figure this new social norm that is coming about literally as we're speaking.
And yes, and we've been talking a lot about that here on the stream as well, and the challenges on that particular point in terms of regulating this race, right? Because it is a race right now, and as you said, it's going faster than anything we've ever seen before. I wonder as well what this all mean to us, and what does it all say about us as society, and how demanding and unwilling to adapt to anything and anyone we've become. Here's one particular thought we found on social media on that.
Then when you really got into talking to Denise, the woman who has this AI chatbot partner, she says it was about her disappointment with humans and her idea that basically being connected to somebody means you'll inevitably have to give up on your own dreams to support their dreams. It reflected not this sort of dystopian technological problem, although that is there. That is one force coming at it from one side, but coming at it from the other side is us, right? We're not connecting to each other the way we used to. There's an epidemic of loneliness. People, don't know how to work through problems together. They don't know how to talk together. And so I found it much more jarring to learn how much we are the issue than technology is the issue, at least in her case.
Very briefly, Jacob Ward is a journalist who was describing there the story of one of the sources of a story on relationships in today's day and age. Alex, your thoughts here on whether we might be the biggest obstacle standing on the way between us, between ourselves and love and real love.
Look, I can be an objective person, right? Obviously, I love people. I think, this is great. This whole world that we have, we get to just go out and hang out and go skydiving and meet people at a bar. That's amazing. That's fun. But, the parentheses, yeah, obviously, a lot of the hardships that we've had in life are related to people letting you down, people not following through on the things that you would have expected them to. Relationships especially. I mean, look, you know how many people I had to date to find my current girlfriend? You know how many bad dates I had to go on, right? 5-year relationship that had to end so I could learn a lesson about it. So,
but it's part of the process, isn't it? It's part of the human experience, part of growing up, yeah.
That's the human experience. And so that's something, there's a duality here that we're kind of getting at a crossroads, and technology is always a reflection of, our needs as a species, as a society. Kind of, everything that we create is to make our life easier. And so we're now at a point where we're making relationships made easier. And is that good or is that bad? Who's to say? I think overall, honestly, if it was my decision, let's pull back a little bit. All right. I agree with what he said, focusing on the fact that maybe technology needs to take a back seat in this, and maybe we need to fix us a little bit, right? I think COVID and the pandemic kind of froze the world a little bit and kind of dialed everybody back socially and kind of culturally, and we just kind of became hermits. And I feel like the world kind of never really fully recovered since that. I look a lot of my friends. I'm 35, and a lot of them just don't go out as much as they used to. And it's not just because they aged 5 years in the last 5 years. I know these people. They would have gone out to go to a concert or whatever. It's done. It's done. And I'm looking at a lot of Gen Zs. They're not going out as much anymore. Obviously, the economy is part of that, but it's just there's a lack of socialization, and that's trickling down to so many elements, including technology.
And we've been talking about dating here, but it's just definitely not only for dating purposes. Take a look at how AI is already revolutionizing our relationship with the dead.
New AI tools Rememory. Talk to your deceased family member in a private room with AI. Wait, what the f***? You have to see this. Not sure how I feel about it. Imagine this. Go into a room with a massive 400-inch screen and high-quality sound system. Bam. Your past loved one is sitting there like an intervention. You can have conversations with them, work out your issues in a private space.
정말 오랜만이네.
저는 전혀 생각도 못했던 일이라 지금 너무 좋아요.
당신 곁에 내가 늘 함께 있다는 거 잊지 말고.
우리 딸 오랜만이네. 잘 지내지? 많이 보고 싶었어. 못 보면 어떡하나 걱정했는데 이렇게 보게 되니 다행이네.
Well, that was wholesome.
Laura, your take on the importance of grief and whether keeping an avatar of a dead loved one can help or hinder that process.
Yeah, I think first to my colleague's point, is this technology, inherently positive or negative? I think that doesn't really exist actually. And it just really depends on how we are using this tech. And I think my concern with something like this is that, grief is painful. And actually, it involves this really complex process of emotionally detaching from your loved one, leaving those memories in the past and accepting that you are going to be living life without that loved one and moving forward. And I think, something like this can provide that temporary connection, that temporary sense of like, oh, thank goodness, grandma or grandpa is still here. But if we're thinking about that long-term process, it's a very complex one. And so I think my concern would be that does it actually prolong the grieving process, because it might be used as actually a way to avoid maybe sitting with those painful feelings, really coming to terms with that reality and then moving forward. So I think, it's even just seeing that is a little bit surprising to me. I'm like, wow, we are really in the future here. But I think, it depends on how people are using it, and seeing it more as being a supplement to things like, journaling, talking to loved ones, processing your grief, and maybe even seeking professional help if it's something that you feel like you can't do alone.
And as Lydia mentioned earlier, it could indeed help with some past trauma. I don't know if you can meet that someone, say everything you got to say, and then move on. But what do we know in terms of how people are using precisely that technology? Lydia, one final question here. The consensus up until now was that technology is not destiny, and that we control the future we will inhabit. Will that still be the case with AI, though? I mean, there's so much that we're talking about, in the sense that when we get to AGI, there's no controlling that. What is the future of AI in relationships?
I really think that I don't subscribe to this kind of we can't do anything, it's beyond us. We can always do things. And our governance systems is that we have leaders who are able to pass laws. We have social input into that. We have public opinion metrics, and we have data and research, and we should use that. And we haven't used that. An example of that is how social media impacts teenagers. And we've known this for many, many years, and not enough restrictions have come into place. It is in our power to restrict. And some schools, for example, are already saying that young children cannot have smartphones. They have to have, the old dumb phones. And this is something we're going to see more and more as people start to step up. Perhaps it's the millennial parents who have seen this and know this and say, no, I want more regulation. I want to make it safer for, I think about children as the most vulnerable, but even for adults. We need classes. Nobody taught us to say like how you deal with this, because this is the first time in human history that we have this option. And we have never, no one in ever our human species history has said, oh, well, you're not great. I don't like talking to you, so I'm going to talk to an AI. This is now a new option. We need to together learn. And I really look to the psychologists and sociologists to help give us a framework to have these conversations.
And hopefully we can finally come up with a way to actually fight back, because we are running out of time. And unfortunately, we are out of time in the stream as well. Laura, Lydia, and Alex, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being part of the show. And thank you all for tuning in. Keep the conversation going online. You can use the hashtag or the handle AJStream, and we will look into your comments and feedback. Take care, and I'll see you soon.